is if the staff has already gone through an exhaustive process to investigate the first complaint, and then in the process where you can appeal the complaint, new issues come up, it seems like it's not bureaucratic, it's a new complaint because you're asking the district to take on a whole set of new issues, which is what I think happened, if I'm thinking correctly, the complaint that you're talking about.
Okay.
I want to be careful, not only the timing, but I want to be careful about not having the staff continue to have to answer revolving issues as it goes through the appeal. I got an angry text from this person too, and I thought it was pretty unfair. We had a lot of material to look through, and I'm assuming that each of us who voted in favor of the superintendent looked through that extensive amount of material and decided to uphold the superintendent's decision. I guess the question I have is the purpose of this discussion to make every complaint like that a detailed public discussion in a forum in front of the board, or is the purpose for us to, as board members, analyze the information we've been given and make a decision? Because that's two very different things.
Okay.
So if I can add, because I do appreciate Director Rosen's points here, if a complaint has been looked at on sort of the merit of the issue that's been brought up, and that gets appealed and it goes to a level 2, and a designee of mine takes a second look at it, and now appealed further to a level 3 with a recommendation, but the new information emerges, is it the board's intent to reopen the issue and look at it on information staff didn't have to begin with? So if there's substantially different new information or evidence, well, then that might change sort of our perspective, because it might be information we didn't have at level 1. So it's important to sort of, I think that's the purpose of maintaining some integrity, to, based on what you shared with us, this is sort of the recommendation we could arrive at. But if you had something else to share, then it's good to have that the first time. But I think at what point does it become, not that it's an unrelated new complaint, but it's just new information we didn't have to begin with.
Well, anyway, some food for thought there. Concern number 1 brought up was the complainant organized some parents at their child's school to look at the quality of the education at the school and to, be part of a collaborative process. Apparently, the school had no site council, which is an issue I started working on back in 2001 because we didn't have any site council training. Many schools didn't have a site council or had one that was a rubber stamp, et cetera, et cetera. And here we are 17 years later, and we're basically in the same boat. So this is a missed opportunity for collaborative school-level planning to improve the education of our children, and we're there. The related issue that popped up in the back and forth was the school budgets weren't, which I believe are supposed to be approved by the site council for some reason. I don't know whether that makes any sense at all, but that's the way the rules are. Weren't published, weren't transparent. So that was germane to the topic, but came up secondarily. So that's a big issue, and the process they went through from a sort of a parent ground up group into into kind of being co-opted into being a PASS team, which is part of a district initiative. I don't even know what a PASS team is. Maybe some of you do. I think that if I were a parent in their shoes, I'd feel screwed with. that I started something, it kind of got co-opted, and then, oh, we're going to deal with this issue on a site council that we haven't had before. Wow, what just happened here to my engagement, the engagement of other parents? And again, site councils are supposed to be composed of elected parent representatives, elected certified staff, elected classified staff, and the principal or their designee, with the option of community members as well. How many schools actually have elections? Yeah. So there's a whole host of issues there that are near and dear to my heart and really important and valid to how we work as a district, that I'm very glad that were brought up. A second concern has to do with a racial equity policy and whether our curriculum is up to snuff in terms of being multicultural. We all know it isn't. Yeah, we're working on it, but we've got a long ways to go still. Yep. A related concern to that is the engagement of parents and community members in the development of curriculum. And it's state law that the public should be involved in when new curriculum materials are adopted. The district wasn't doing that 10 years ago. I got involved and brought it to the board, embarrassed people in public, and negotiated a process which worked for about 3 years. I mean, again, this is another opportunity to engage stakeholders in the process. And then we stopped doing curriculum adoption because we ran out of money in 2008, and everything got forgotten. No systems. It'd be nice to see, again, a concerted effort if we're doing a social studies curriculum to bring in, faculty from universities, to bring in a World Affairs Council or, nonprofits groups, and to engage them in our process. A third concern was the lack of rigor and low expectations in curriculum. Yeah. And again, Dr. Valentino is leading an effort here to just begin to build that system. But, spot on. And seeing that at your child's school is incredibly frustrating and painful and all sorts of other things. So I'll stop there, but because we're over time. But again, doesn't have to be long, but I think a salient discussion of the issues raised by a complaint is good for everybody and respectful to the community. Thanks.
So I just want to understand from a process point, when a complaint like this comes up, this is the kind of discussion we would have before we vote, or is the purpose to have staff available so that we can ask them questions? I still don't understand.
So maybe
What we're trying to
maybe I can make a
accomplish.
decision what I thought it was going to be. So when I look back about the sort of just how things happened at the meeting, I think a couple things could have been done differently. Maybe it could have been a very short summary of the 3 issues that got raised was lack of site council, curriculum material, and but more of a list. And to acknowledge that we all have had the material for 2 weeks and we've read it and what the components are that were supplied to us, which we didn't do, which that wasn't communicated, but I certainly read through. It was a pretty lengthy packet. So to me, it's just the manifestation of publicly acknowledging that we've reviewed the material and here's what the issues are, but not, I think we need to be really careful, just unless you guys want to break all the records that I had with the 7 or 8 hour meetings, that
That's right.
the issue is, some of these are an individual making a complaint and staff has already, and I think in this case, they did spend a fair amount of time addressing in a legitimate way issues that were raised. And I think we just need to be careful that if I'm looking at sort of the amount of time the board has to deliberate, and if it's going to be, we're going to be talking about, you know, a $200 million bond project that's going to impact, you know, 1,700 students, I'd be much more likely to want to spend time on that than an individual's complaint that we've already all read the material. But I do think we can, in a way that's more visible, be respectful of the complaints before us and acknowledge it, because I think, you know, I feel like I respected the complainant by reading through the materials, and if I had disagreed with the superintendent, I would have asked a question. So I think that's always within the realm, but if we're going to be, and if it's well thought out, I would recommend that we summarize it and indicate our respect that we've considered the materials, and then vote. But I can't see that we have a long discussion about every complaint, because otherwise we're going to, I mean, we'd have to reprioritize how we're going to spend our time, which I guess we could talk about at the retreat, if we want to do that, but it would be a significant change. Any other comments by?
Just sort of to piggyback on what Amy said, you know, I think a lot of these complaints do have a nugget of systemic issues that that we probably ought to at least acknowledge and do something about. I mean, I do think it's one of the things we talked about when we were doing the complaint policy was using complaints as a mechanism to identify systemic issues that are problematic.
Well, maybe that could just be a component of every staff report before the summary at the end, which is that aside from the issues of this individual case, this has raised X, Y, and Z that merits attention. This is who's on point to look into that or whatever, that it becomes part of the boilerplate of the staff response.
Yeah.
That'd be a pretty easy thing to do, I think.
I guess I should probably make a similar statement around staff at each of the level at which we examine the issue, go about it in a thoughtful due diligence manner. And so we are making a note of when issues or questions are raised. And so just to use the example of school governance, it raises for us the importance of stressing that expectation for every single school in our school district, that there is a governing body at the site level, that our principals should ensure that elections are held and that the voices are representative, and that is the place where folks can bring up those kinds of issues at the site level. And if that's not functioning, and frankly, we need a family engagement plan where that's a specific support and technical assistance we can provide to sites, but it's highlighted for us, that's not an area of strength for us.
Right.
I imagine there's a lot of schools with very strong governing bodies, but I probably would venture to say that's not the case at 100% of them. And so, you know, it is true that, you know, these kinds of complaints do raise these kinds of issues, and we are making a note of them, and the beginning of every school year is another opportunity to affirm maybe what hasn't been a big area of focus that we do need to make an area of priority.
But I think the point, Superintendent, is, I mean, when you look at like the staff report for this complaint this evening, I mean, it's incredibly thorough. It took an incredible amount of time. But I think what we're talking about is not surprising that, yes, staff is attending to the broader issues in the context of analyzing these complaints. But we need that one extra step back to us, because we'll continue to hear from both the aggrieved individual and the community about how are things going to be better moving forward. So just that little extra step of how are we going about system change on this issue in particular.
And all board members, when they read the complaints, can look for trends as well. So on us as well.
I just want to encourage our broader school communities that the complaint process doesn't have to be the only route by which we go about continuous improvement.
It's supposed to be the last route.
That's the first paragraph, a couple of paragraphs of the formal complaint policy, that we'd like to have things solved. That's the kind of the last resort. All right, thank you, Director Bailey, for raising that issue. And just like with any other thing that we try new, sometimes it takes a little while to get in a groove on what works. So you can see how we go. So board committees, conference reports.
Have not met since our last meeting.
Other business, committee referrals. Just a reminder to the board.
It's a summer break.
Had a great vacation.
I was like, really? So just a reminder to the board that we have 2 executive sessions after this. So with that,
Rita's gonna make you-
the next regular meeting of the board is July 24th, and the meeting is adjourned.